Welcome to It's True, Tales of the Paranormal, exploring the inexplicable. Most encounters with the odd are quite explainable. An overwhelming number, 80 to 90% in fact, will find very logical explanation. Our focus is on that 10 to 20% that do not. It's time to give a voice to real encounters and share genuine experiences of the paranormal. And now, it's true.
All right, back on It's True, Tales of the Paranormal, and welcome to part 2 of our discussion on religion, Christianity, faith, and the paranormal. Now, in part 1, if you remember, we looked at the disparity in belief of the paranormal within the Christian faith, discovering that it's pretty polarizing. This is a tradition grounded in the spiritual element, but and some see that spiritual element and see a connection to the unknown, see it as mystical. Others see those possibilities of the paranormal and dub it as pure evil, something straight from the devil. We also touched on the scriptures a little bit to see what could be found there. Today in part 2, we continue to explore why are these entities still here in spirit form, and how does that presence fit in with religious ideology. And we'll also hear from our panel members about their own personal experiences within the paranormal. Those panelists are, back again, Reverend John Gill of Church of the Savior. Reverend Gill is a graduate of Yale Divinity School, has more than 20 years of experience as a pastor, teacher, and community leader within the Alabama-Tennessee Association of the United Church of Christ. Also, Mags Williams. Mags is with Bench Breaking Broads Ghost Hunters in Nashville. She's an empathic spiritual interpreter, having conducted paranormal investigations throughout the Southeast and United States. Also, finally, Brooke Montoya, lead investigator for Afterlife Paranormal Investigations of Oklahoma. She's a full-time college professor and licensed counselor. Currently, Brooke is working on several books detailing haunted history in towns in Oklahoma and Kansas. So part 2 of the discussion coming up. We'll jump in with a question posed by Brooke when we return.
What's interesting in my perspective anyways, is as I question some of the things that I believed, and maybe some of those have changed, investigating and the experiences that I have had definitely confirmed to me that there is more to this existence than just this earth plane, and that there's a lot of beautiful things awaiting for us, right? And I think a lot of the questions too that I see where people are in disbelief of like how God can coexist with our paranormal beliefs or heaven and things like that is, why would children, for example, get earthbound like in spirit? Or why do people, why wouldn't they go to heaven or hell, right? Why are they here haunting a home or something like that? So I'd be curious to see what all of your perspectives are on that. That's a question I get a lot from people who have Christian beliefs.
Mm-hmm. My personal view is that the people that are, quote unquote, haunting places, that's kind of like the purgatory in Catholicism, that they're stuck here until either they're reset or who knows, reborn, because I do believe in reincarnation. There has to be somewhere for these people to go.
We have free will to worship God. And so we have free will to maybe even make the choice of when we go to heaven to be, with our loved ones, or to start that work. But I don't know. I don't know if it's as simple as that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would just say I don't know either. I would sort of say I'm sort of agnostic about it. The tradition doesn't speak about that a lot. Really, when you look even at the scriptures, they're pretty, in many ways, they're pretty focused on our, how we. There's references to the afterlife, right? But it's really focused on how we live our lives now, and there's not a lot of clear talk about what the afterlife would be like, what happens immediately after death, and that sort of thing. So it's just not clear enough to say from within the tradition, I think, what might be happening with these experiences. My own take on it, which is just, again, this is just me thinking out loud and from talking to people in my own experiences. My own experience has just been over the course of my life, I've had an increasing sense over time that the boundary between this world and the next world is thin and is not far off. And so for me, it means the idea of communication between those worlds or visitation between those worlds in some way is possible. And we have this idea that there's some huge spatial difference. I mean, in the ancient world, of course, they thought, okay, we're on Earth, heaven's up there, and hell's down. Well, we know that it's about different. It's more like talking about parallel universes or something, as some physicists do now. So that's my sense, Brooke. Just that I don't have an answer, but that my experience, my sense is that we just, the boundary between this world and the next is close. So
yeah, and maybe they're not even stuck at all. Maybe they're just visiting when we're there and getting notes.
Maybe that's sort of what I wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I've also had experiences with my father, who passed away 20 years ago, that feel, usually for me it's in dreams or in other things that happen around me, but are very much like visits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
very palpable visits. But sometimes at times when I need a visit.
Mm-hmm.
But why, and then people might ask, well, then why don't you get that all the time from other people? And I mean, that's where I'm agnostic about it. How do you just don't know exactly what there's a heck of a lot we don't know. So yeah, about the universe, about our own lives, about spiritual world. So for me, it's faith gives you a place to stand, but standing in that place, it also should give you a place where you can stand without fear and be open to, these kinds of things. I think that's the way I take it anyway.
Well, how have your personal experiences shaped your ideology when it comes to religion? Mags, I know you have mentioned being visited by your father. How have those impacted your thinking when it comes to religion and the paranormal? Or
So I'm probably that 0.001% that has different views on it, just because I was born and raised Episcopalian. But I have always believed in reincarnation, at least all the way back to about 6 years old that I can remember. So it's a little bit different. And of course, my mom and dad also talked about death with us as kids. What happens to the body, what happens to the soul, we talked about that stuff when I was little. So, and I know a lot of families don't. Until it's almost too late. And that's one thing that people really, really should talk about with their children. Because God forbid someone's orphaned as a young child. That leaves them with a ton of questions that no one around them will answer. or can answer. But I think for me, it was a little bit different, like I said, because I had that background where we discussed death openly. It really didn't, it fit fine with my Christianity beliefs, in my mind anyway. No one told me you can't believe that. So I just kind of fitted into the nice little box in my head that reincarnation is a thing and Christianity is a thing, and they can coexist.
Okay. Brooke, how about you and your personal experiences?
So I grew up Southern Baptist. We went to church twice on Sunday and every Wednesday, and was highly involved. Here. And yeah. And, I feel like what I was taught was that God was to be feared, and he was a vengeful God. And so I remember, I grew up with a lot wrapped around that. And I think that as I distanced myself a little bit as an adult from those beliefs, I started to seeking out my own ideas of what this looked like and challenging some of those views. Mm-hmm. When I was in grad school, I sat next to this woman who's now one of my great friends, and we were having conversations about how she could see ghosts since she was a little girl. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, I've loved everything scary forever, but I didn't know if I believed. If this girl is telling me she can see ghosts, I believe, but I still want to experience it myself, right? And then we had a conversation about tarot cards, and I thought my first question was well, wait a minute, what about God? How does God fit into that, right? And so she really expanded my thinking on a lot of things and how God does fit into these things in a way that I never really had heard before. And so then as I joined a paranormal investigation team, that really has just expanded my beliefs of spirituality and filled in some holes of things that I just felt, that was not quite right about what I was taught when I was growing up. That just didn't resonate with my soul, And so it has shaped my beliefs quite vastly. So.
John, what about you? Would you have any personal experiences that contribute? I'm an expert in this area. I think Mags and Brooke are more on top of, more knowledgeable about it than I am. So I'm probably in the category of a lot of people who have experiences that they can't quite explain, or that, and they don't talk about it a whole lot. But so for me, I would guess in my role as a pastor, I have been present with people at the time of death many times, and in that experience over time, you certainly feel like you are standing close to some kind of boundary. And when somebody, even if somebody is very unconscious or not very interactive at the time of death, there's a very strong feeling that something has changed, that their spirit has left the body, something has changed. So it creates a sense of the mystery of that boundary, and that it's closer than you think. Because when you're there at that time, you feel like, oh, this boundary is always here. I'm just not aware of it most of the time. This boundary between this world and the next world, or this life, and whatever that is. I remain kind of unclear about. That has given me is an openness to the sense of mystery about that. Mm-hmm. But I did have one experience that was extremely powerful for me. I was working with a family. There was a young man who at the time was about my age, who was dying of brain cancer, and he had a young child who also the age of my children. And I worked with that family a lot over the months where he declined and died. And I can't remember if I was present at the time of his death, but I spent a lot of time with him and with that family. And we held a memorial service for him at the church one summer evening. And it was a beautiful service. Everybody enjoyed, we celebrated his life and so on. And I was the last person to leave the building that night. And in those days, sometimes I would just to rest after a service before I left the building, I would go to the piano and play something on the piano. And I was playing on the piano, nobody else in the building, and all of a sudden I had this intense feeling that I was being watched from above, like as if it was somebody up in the balcony or up toward the ceiling or something. And I mean, it was, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was a very, very powerful feeling. And it made me feel afraid, honestly. I felt afraid in that moment. So but it was so strong, I immediately stopped playing the piano. I walked around the building and turned off the lights, and because I felt like someone was in the building with me. And as I was moving around the building and turning off the lights, I felt like that presence was getting closer and closer to me, and I was feeling more and more anxious about it. So I got to the church door, I locked the church door, I walked probably rapidly toward my car, and all of a sudden I felt whatever that was come rushing toward me. I didn't see anything, it was more of a feeling, but it was a really strong feeling of rushing toward me and coming around me. And then I heard in my head the words, "Thank you." And it still gets me. I mean,
Wow.
It was, and I just knew it was him.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a really powerful experience at the time. It was,
Yeah, no doubt.
so that, you know, that has stayed with me. And so, you know, to me, it's just about being open to those kinds of things, even if you can't fully understand them or grasp them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know I started this as and still am a skeptical believer. I believe that most situations can be explained rationally. A strong majority can be 80, 90%, but that leaves 10, 20% that cannot be. And that is a large number when you consider the volume of cases. So if you're watching this and focused on my door, for instance, you saw my door move, and you might think, "Oh my, is he being visited by the paranormal?" But no, it's this little booger right here. That's she came to see me. But in terms of, I know this is a broad.
Well, you know, Scott, if you renamed her Paranormal, then you could tell people.
That'd be awesome.
This is my paranormal experience. All right. Well, I might do that. Okay. You might get a new name soon. Have to get new bowls for you and everything. All right. And that wraps up part 2 of our discussion on faith, Christianity, religion, and the paranormal on It's True Tales of the Paranormal. Come back for part 3. We'll touch on where the prospects of alien existence fit in with the paranormal as it pertains to faith, and a lot more to get to. So thanks for watching, and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to It's True, Tales of the Paranormal. Subscribe today to receive updates on new episodes and Tales of the Paranormal.